Hi, welcome to KiwaniTalk. We're a public information program put together by people from the Dearborn Kiwanis Club, with help from students and faculty at Dearborn High School, my alma mater, at the facilities of WDHS, one of the finest production studios around. My name is Gary Gardner, and today we're talking about a problem that you see, but you don't always see. And there's a need, but no one knows about it. And we've got someone to talk about a need to get it out there and help us talk about this particular product, which is a phenomenal, kind of amazing thing, is Lauren Knill from the Empowerment Plan. Lauren, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Gary.
Yeah, we're glad to have you here. Now, Lauren, you are the Development Outreach Manager for the Empowerment Plan. But before you became that, you had a life. Where did you grow up?
I'm from the east side, Grosse Pointe Farms, born and raised, still over there.
And you went to school in the Detroit area?
I did. I went to K College, and then I finished at Wayne State here in Detroit.
And you are now working for the Empowerment Plan, but before that, what was your career? But what did you want to do when you grew up?
Yeah, well, it wasn't this. I thought I was going to go into public relations and communications and internships. You know, as they allow you to explore that in college, I realized corporate world wasn't for me. Started volunteering, and that just kind of snowballed into full-time work and nonprofit work, and eventually fund development for nonprofits.
Fund development for nonprofits. So that sounds like it's kind of fun, but it's like fun development, you know.
Yeah, that extra D takes away some of the fun.
That D takes away the fun part of it.
Yeah. I always said I never wanted to go into sales, and it's kind of like sales without so much of a product, although I get a product now that I'm with Empowerment Plan.
You got a product. So, but the Empowerment Plan, who created the Empowerment Plan, and when did they start it up?
So we were founded in 2012 by our CEO and founder, Veronica Scott. She was a college student at the College for Creative Studies here in Detroit, and she was given a project in a class for a semester to create a product that filled a need in the community. This was the 2009-2010 era. And, you know, the economic downturn had just happened, the car companies were experiencing trouble. We were seeing some of the highest numbers of homelessness than we'd ever seen in the city. And, you know, her Google search told her homelessness. It was something that was actually close to her heart, that she had experienced as a child growing up. So she went into the shelters in Detroit and spent hundreds of hours developing a product. Her first idea was a coat that would turn into a tent. That didn't work out, so it evolved into this coat that turns into a sleeping bag.
A coat that magically turned into a sleeping bag.
Magically.
So she went into the shelters and saw this need.
Yeah.
Talk about the kind of person who winds up in a shelter. It's not what you typically think.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of assumptions made when you say the word homeless. You have an idea of who that is and why they're there. My experience through this job is that every single person that I've encountered is homeless or without shelter, displaced, for different reasons. I've met people with graduate degrees. I've met people who were professors at one point. Lots of veterans, that's a big problem. Veterans, LGBTQ youth experience homelessness at high levels. People escaping domestic violence. And once you enter a shelter, it actually becomes very difficult to leave a shelter, because you find that in order to leave a shelter, the shelter wants to see that you have permanent housing. But to get a landlord to sign off on your lease, they want to see that you have a job and steady income. And oftentimes employers don't want to hire somebody who has a shelter listed as their home address. So it's very hard to get out of that cycle.
So the shelter doesn't keep you from leaving. They don't hold you inside.
They
I
don't.
hope not.
No, they don't. But they want you to be as successful as possible. They don't want to let you leave and then continue living on the streets. So everybody's trying to give you the best start they can, but through the system, there's becomes very hard without a step up, without a helping hand to get you out.
And people, like you said, there's multiple reasons that people wind up in shelters. And you said, part of my law practice is people who are victims of domestic violence.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they stay in bad relationships,
Yeah.
and they should really get out.
They should. And it becomes very hard, especially when there are children involved, money's involved. It's very scary to leave that situation into the unknown and go somewhere you don't know. So we have many of our employees that have experienced that.
So the traditional and wrong thinking about people in shelters is they're all spaced out, drugged out, ne'er-do-wells, but there's people from your next door that could wind up in a shelter.
Definitely. I think often we don't like to think about how close we all are. Most of us are in a situation where you're one major life event away from ending up on the streets or without a home. If you don't have a good supportive family or a safety net like that, it can be very close to
So the
reality.
Veronica, the founder of the Empowerment Plan, saw this need, and she decided to, as part of this class project.
Yeah.
Ultimately, do you know what she ultimately got as a grade on the project?
I don't know what she got as a grade. That's the first question I've had about her grade. I'll have to ask her. But she did very well. The dean of the school actually really empowered her to keep going with this, connected her to donors, to people like Carhartt, to have her keep going. She never intended to do more than 1 or 2 coats, but what happened was the people she was working with to design the coat, who were living in the shelters, started their own wait list without her prompting. And at the same time, a woman, as she was ending the project, approached Veronica and very angrily said, "What I need is a job. I don't need a coat. Give me a job." And that was kind of that magic aha moment. She graduated December of 2011, and January 1st, 2012, she founded the Empowerment Plan.
And you said you get your funding from where? Where does the Empowerment Plan as a nonprofit? Talk about that aspect of where people get the money to start these and maintain them.
Yeah, so for Veronica, actually, that first year, it was her and 3 women she had hired out of a shelter, and they were funded by the PayPal button on her blog. That's what kept them going. But she got some press, she got some help funding and starting up that nonprofit. And we're a very traditional nonprofit. A third of our budget is funded by the sponsorship of this coat, and the other 2/3 of our budget comes from traditional nonprofit, grants, corporate giving, and individuals.
Is that where you start out, the grant writing part of it, or?
I'm very lucky. I get to drive sponsorship and distribute this coat around the world.
Around the world?
Around the world.
So the initial plan that Veronica had was to make a coat that turned into a tent. Not so good a plan?
I think actually there are some people who have actually made that work. I think the functionality of it, of what you can do, and she wanted a coat that was more than just a coat and a sleeping bag. This obviously is now rolls up and you can carry it with you, and you can take it many ways.
So basically, this is an example. We're going to take a look at it a little bit later on, but you can throw it over your shoulder, put your hand through there and carry it pretty easily.
Yeah, you can roll personal items up inside when you roll it and carry it with you, so you're not just
it's
leaving it behind.
not all that heavy. So the idea for people, but if they're in the shelter, why would they need a coat and a tent and a sleeping bag? How do you get it from the shelter people to people who need this type of equipment?
You know, a lot of people think about shelters. In most major cities, there are more people in need of a bed than there are beds in shelters. There are also people who can go to warming centers during the day. Something I've learned is that warming centers aren't always necessarily warm. They can be pretty cool, and you need something to protect you. Some people who have shelter overnight, they get kicked out during the day and they have to spend the days outside. And we've had recent stories this winter of people in Detroit who live in homes without heat or gas, and they freeze to death at night. And so this is not just a coat for homeless sleeping on the streets. This is a coat for people in need.
And it doesn't look like a coat. We're gonna open up the magic package in a little bit. So she started out with 3 people. And you talked about sponsorship from Carhartt. Talk about the relationship. And this material, you can't feel it like I can, but it feels very much like a Carhartt coat.
It is. It's 600 denier Cordura fabric.
Well, okay, hang on. You said some magic words there. 600 denier corduroy. What is a denier?
Denier, oh gosh, you're giving me a question. I'm not quite sure. It's about the tightness and the texture of the fabric and the thread count, I believe, is denier. Somebody might leave you a comment that I got that wrong.
Okay, but that's fine. And so this is the outside material.
This is,
And what is inside of it?
We try to be as sustainable as possible with our coat. So we source our fabric. We base this exterior shell on what was first donated to us by Carhartt, and that's what we try to source. And the interior, we've had help from GM. They have helped us get recycled plastic bottles that make polyfill for the inside of the coat. It's also been the interior car door paneling of a Chevy Bolt. And last winter we had a donation from a company out of Atlanta called Refrigiware, who donated enough insulation for 1,000 coats that go to -40 degrees.
Sounds like it would keep you warm in a pinch. And is the material somewhat waterproof, or?
It is. So we can't say it's a waterproof coat because the seams are not sealed, but it is water and weather treated. You spray water at it and it beads right off. I have people who have used it for 4 or 5 winter seasons.
So Veronica started this company. She got some materials from Carhartt. Need a place to do this. Where did she find a place to work out of?
That first year, she was in what was essentially a utility closet at one of the shelters in Midtown in Detroit. From there, we were able to move on to Pony Ride, which used to be in the Corktown area. And 2 years ago, we moved into a 21,000 square foot facility that is all our own, that we were able to design. So we have over 11,000 square feet of just production space.
21,000 feet. I'm sure there's more than 3 people there now.
There
How
are.
has Veronica's vision for the empowerment plan, how has it grown, and how do you get the 21,000 square foot facility?
You know, when she first started this, her idea was that this was going to be permanent employment for women in shelters. She wanted to focus on hiring single parents, head of households living in the shelters, so that you're not just raising one person, but you're raising a whole family. And that was something she had experienced, that as a child, she was deemed as not having a future because of her parents' struggle, and she wanted to give those children a future as well. So she hired these parents living in the shelters in Detroit with the idea that they were going to be employed at Empowerment Plan forever. But what naturally happened is that people, as they stabilized, as they were able to move out of the shelter, they wanted to move on to bigger and better things. So she saw that this could become transitional employment, that you could come to us and we will help you move out of the shelter, get into permanent housing, give you supportive programming, and move on. So now we have, as of Monday this week, 53 employees.
53.
53.
Up from 3 when they first started. The first year when she had the 3 employees working out of the janitor's closet or whatever, utility closet at the shelter, how many of these babies did she crank out?
I believe it was just over 100 coats in that first year.
Okay. And people who got the coats, where do they stay? If they're not staying in the shelter, where would they go with the coats?
We have heard of people obviously in their cars, people who have to stay outside because they have pets. People are very attached to their pets and their pets can't be let into the shelter, so they'll sleep outside with their pets. And you often will see people, unfortunately, under overpasses. You'll see people in public parks. Hart Plaza in Detroit actually has lots of places where there are some small encampments of homeless.
And so we're going to get into this a little bit more, but describe what we have here, Lauren.
Sure. So this is our coat, the first coat Veronica made. She never learned how to sew before. It took her 89 hours to make the first coat, and it weighed 23 pounds. It was made out of truly recycled materials. I mean, it was old peanut bags, old fencing, worsted wool. But we've become a little bit more efficient since then, and it now takes about 90 minutes to make one coat, and it weighs just under 5 pounds.
And it looks bigger than a traditional coat.
It does, because it has a lot of extra features, but we also make it in one size fits most right now. In homeless outreach, you'll usually only get one chance to give somebody resources or supplies, so having a one size fits most gives us that opportunity to hand it out to as many people as
Before we
possible.
get to the break, let's open up the first little snap here and see what we have.
So we only use heavy-duty snaps and Velcro because buttons fall off and zippers break, and then that makes your coat kind of useless. A lot of people who are living in poverty in shelters don't have brand new coats that have never been anybody else's, so we're trying to give dignity to those in need, that this is a coat that is yours and only yours. It's not covered in logos and labels of somebody else. And we make it in different colors so that it's not a homeless uniform that you can easily identify.
Saying hello. And this looks like it's got some pretty cool features. Can we open it up a little bit here and see what we have?
So this is the heavy duty Velcro.
And this is...
This is what we call the foot bag.
Okay, well, hang on a second before you get to that.
Sure.
You look at the inside of this, so it looks like it's pretty substantial. It's the craftsmanship looks like it's pretty good, and the material that's in the insulation in here. This is the stuff that maybe not this model, but can keep you warm down to 0 degrees or.
Yeah. So our standard coat, which is what we have here, is I say it's comfortable to 0 to 10 degrees, and then those 1,000 coats that we have with the refrigerator go to -40.
And the magic part of this is so you can wear this like a coat, but if you need to go to sleep, what happens? Look at this.
You fold this out, and that is actually removable and can be used as a bag, but it seals right back up. There's Velcro around the bottom. And it's a coat, and the sleeves can pull in and make a pillow.
Very good. Well, what we're going to do right now, we're going to take a little break. We're going to put this kind of back together. Then we're going to do a demonstration. We're going to get a volunteer up here to try the jacket on and the coat. We'll be back right now with Lauren Knill from the Empowerment Plan. The exciting part's about to come. Don't go away.
Who is a kid? Well, that's a kid. And another. Look, a gaggle of them. Or is it a herd? Litter? Pride. But what about her? Tell her she's not a kid. Or him. So how do we tell who is a kid? Height? Age, maybe. But some of us have to grow up faster than others. A kid. A kid wants to make the world better. And one day, he just might. Is a kid fearless? Vulnerable? Strong? Nervous? Yes. 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 Kiwanis is 600,000 kids at heart doing all the little and big things it takes to help children around the world. Because kids need Kiwanis. All of them.
Welcome back to KiwaniTalk. I'm your host, Gary Gardner, with almost looks like two guests up here. But our main guest is Lauren Knill, who is the Development and Outreach Manager for the Empowerment Plan. A really kind of unique organization that helps people in shelters get jobs and outreach. And so talk about, before you get to our fashion show, what do people get from the plan, and how do they get paid, and how do they move out of the shelters?
So we go into the shelters in Detroit and we hire single parents who are living in the shelters with their families. They're hired immediately, 40 hours full time at a wage higher than minimum wage. And then they're then eligible for a $1 raise every 6 months. What makes this really unique, though, is that 60% of your paid time is in production making this beautiful coat, but the other 40% of your paid time is in supportive programming. So that's if you don't have your GED, you go take your GED. Driver's training in a city like Detroit, you need a license to get to your job. Right. Domestic violence support, we have yoga once a week. Meditation, we have a clinical therapist on site. We have a career advancement manager. So even though we're training you to be a seamstress or a sewing machine operator, that's not what you have to be for the rest of your life. Maybe the next 2 years, and we're going to help you get to where you want to be.
So where we want to be right now is to show how this thing. Let's stand up if we can. We get our microphones here. We're going to bring our volunteer mannequin out. Ray, come on up for us. So what we have here is the coat. Let's open it up here. Ray, open it up, and we'll put it on there for us. So there you go. So Ray is slight of size, but it fits him pretty well.
It does. It's very toasty. What's nice is we take feedback from the end user, so anybody who's using this on the street, we do our best to try and contact them or outreach organizations and get feedback on design changes. So things like the hood, which used to be more of a traditional hood, we now make much tighter, and it makes a hat and a scarf built in, so it keeps you very warm.
And you can, if you want to, you can probably pull that back a little bit. So
You can pull that down.
Pull it back
if you
so
need
don't,
to.
if it's not that warm out, and pull it down. You got this, and there's plenty of room inside of it for you there, Ray.
Yeah.
How about the pockets? How do the pockets feel there?
They're extra large pockets. They're very deep.
Very nice. Well,
Yeah.
you can carry some stuff in those
You
pockets.
could. We're working on a redesign this summer, and we will be adding interior pockets. And that foot bag that we showed you earlier is going to be able to turn into a backpack. We were seeing people on the streets taking that foot bag and turning it into a backpack, retrofitting it with thread and other materials. And we said, well, why have them make it into a backpack when we can do that? So next fall, we're hoping to have a really great new design come out.
And again, this part of it here, if you didn't have the jacket on, Ray, put your arm
Yep.
through there like you're going to carry it. You can carry it around like that.
Yeah,
And-
pillows and sleeping bags are usually the first things that are left behind or cleaned up by a city. So this means you can roll up your coat and take it with you. In the summer, in cities like Detroit, it is still very cold at night, so you still need a sleeping bag at night, or at the very least a sleeping mat. So this is really all for all seasons.
And how does it feel, Ray?
Feels great.
Very
Feels
good.
great. I'm gonna
Okay.
take a joint.
Exit stage right. There we go. Okay. Very good. Well, it's a work in progress, but it seems like it's pretty complete.
It is. I think what Veronica has done not only is the coat evolving in design to make it as useful as possible and as sustainable as possible, she's also evolving the program. So as the needs change for our employees, so does the program.
So you have these people that are not just, they're seamstress people, but they're learning more and more life skills, and that seems to be a big part of the program for you.
Yeah, it's not just one issue that causes homelessness, and it's not just one solution to homelessness. You really have to look at each person individually and what their needs are to help them escape poverty and homelessness.
And how long have you been with the empowerment plan?
2 years tomorrow.
So talk about some of the success stories that you've seen in those 2 years. What have you seen?
Well, there's a lot of great success stories. We have Jessica, who just a few years ago was living in her car with her children, 5 children in a car with her. Her children didn't even know they were homeless. That's where they thought they lived. But she's been with us. She has now been able to be promoted, and she's not just a production employee. She's a floor manager. She's helping lead the redesign and has joined our management team. We have women like Rachel, who was wasn't even a single parent herself, but was raising her siblings and was homeless, trying to raise her siblings, came to us and has now left and is working as an industrial sewer at a company here in Detroit. We've had people move on to medical billing at Blue Cross Blue Shield, customer service at Quicken Loans. In 8 years since we were founded, we have helped raise more than 90 families out of homelessness, and not a single one has fallen back into the shelter.
Sounds like a remarkable sort of
Yeah.
thing. So the volume now in your 21,000 square foot facility, how many jackets or coats or sleeping bags, tents, homes, whatever you want to call them, all great things, how many are you going to make in this year?
This year, finishing up this winter season now, we've done 9,000 coats produced and distributed. Since 2012, we've produced and distributed over 43,000 coats. And we've distributed them in all 50 states, 11 Canadian provinces and territories, and 20 countries on 6 continents.
How is the word spread, and how can people who want to help, how can they help the empowerment plan?
So we've been really lucky that it's been a lot of word of mouth. We've had a few articles, a few stories. People will share us on social media all the time. But what's great about our coat is the employment is local here in Detroit, but this coat can go out to communities around the world. So we'll have people fund and sponsor coats, and we'll send them to San Diego. We'll send them to Texas recently. I sent some free of charge to Tennessee this week after the tornadoes. Or some organizations who can't afford to sponsor the coat on their own will reach out to us. And thanks to very generous donors who send in $125 to sponsor a coat. We can send those coats to churches, to small nonprofits and outreaches.
So if someone wanted to reach out to the empowermentplan.org,
Yes,
oh, that's the website.
it's convenient.
So empowermentplan.org.
Yes.
And you can go on, is there a button you can push to?
Yep, there's a donate now button. There's also a little button in a drop down that says get involved, and it looks at other things you can fund. You can help fund our pantry, which we allow our ladies, if they have food scarcity issues, they can take food home from our pantry. You can fund classes, education, childcare, a lot of different things.
So Veronica's taken this from a utility closet to a 21,000 square foot facility. What's her plan going forward? How many people, how many coats does she want to make? When's she going to expand to other cities? What's she going to be doing with this empowerment plan?
So this coming year, we're looking at a goal of 11,000 coats. We also think we will max out at a capacity of 60 to 70 full-time employees on a transitional 2 to 2.5 year basis. And then from there, we have to look at how do we want to grow. We can create a curriculum that we take into different cities and teach them how they do this on their own. Or maybe we franchise and create other factories and make children's coats or make coats just for FEMA and rescue situations. There's a lot of different places to go from here.
And one of the things you mentioned, how long is a typical person part of the empowerment plan as they're going through it? One of your persons you mentioned was now a supervisor, but people move up, move on, hopefully.
Sure.
And
like I said, everybody's different. So some people are only with us 6 to 9 months. People who need to take the GED, we want them to fully pass the GED. On an average now that takes about 18 months. But we say it's between 2 years and 30 months that people are with us. That's a lot longer than your typical transitional employment organization who is 60 to 90 days and focused on numbers. We're really looking at helping you stabilize yourself and your family so when you do leave us, you're going to be very successful.
And the work environment, I'm sure that it's a pretty happy place.
It's an incredible place. We often call it a family. We celebrate each other's wins. It's a big open factory, so you'll hear echoes of cheering because somebody got their housing voucher or somebody got a new car or they passed their GED. We're all encouraging each other to be their best selves and to grow.
Well, Lauren, Knill, thank you for coming.
Thank
This
you.
is really cool. I mean, and Veronica, who created this idea from a project at College for Creative Studies, find out what her grade was.
I will let you know.
It's got to be an A+.
You would think. I would hope so.
So if anybody wants to donate or contribute or get some ideas, empowermentplan.org.
That's us.
Lauren, Knill, thank you very much for
Thank
coming
you
on the
so much,
program. I
Gary.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
And think about helping out, not just hopefully with the empowerment plan, but whatever there's a need out there, much more need than you can ever imagine. Get involved and help people out, and don't think people in shelters, homeless, they're not bad because they just had bad circumstances happen to them. Gary Gardner, bye-bye. There you go.
Yeah, thank you. That was wonderful.